Welcome everyone to the XMTP Developer Community Call, the first of 2025. So Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Jeha and I'll be your host today. So we are recording this webinar for folks who can't attend live, and we'll be sharing it in the XMTP Community Forum for everyone to be able to access. And at the start of each XMTP Dev Call, we drop an NFT, which you are free to mint. I'll put a link to it in our chat here. There we go. Just to commemorate each meeting and all of the folks who participate. I'd also like to share a link to our community code of conduct, which we practice and recognize during this call and all of our public gatherings of the XMTP community. And we share it mainly to just set the tone for folks to, feel welcome to share their ideas and ask questions and create a great place for shared learning. So folks in the webinar who are in the attendees, we're watching, despite my earlier flub, we are watching the list of attendees and would love it if you raise your hand. We'd love for you to participate and speak, and we can unmute you. Please do also use the Q&A tool to ask any questions and give feedback at any time. We're really here as one group of folks and not just a screen that is talking at you. The meeting is for you. So, and now, let's get started with our main event. I'm so excited about this. It's been a few weeks in the making here, but I'd love to introduce Thomas Humphreys and Devin Elliot. They are building Backpack, a self-banking service that offers bill pay, card issuance, payment gateways for merchants who are unbanked or who have been priced out of the market for whatever reason. And they reached out to us via our mutual colleague, Adam Hurwitz, who's a researcher for Safe. And they wanted to share a proposal with this community. And it's a proposal for using XMTP and Safe. And maybe I won't give away the punchline here, but maybe I'll hand it over to Thomas and Devin now to take it from here. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Jeha. Appreciate all this. And Thomas is the one that kind of got us kicked off and started here. He's on a little bit quieter time zone, so I'll probably speak a little bit more to get us started. But apologies. Yeah, thanks for having us. So let's see. I guess where would you like to go from? Do you want me to do background and stuff first, or do you want to just kind of go into the conversation, or how would you like to go about this?
Yeah, it would be great if you would just kind of go straight into the proposal and maybe talk a little bit about how the community can provide feedback that would be useful to you, the use case
Okay.
you're looking at addressing.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess then the way I'll do this is I'm going to kind of show you what our product is and like where it's coming from, because I think that then explains much more how the agents will feed into this, and then where the messaging shows up. And maybe kind of as like a preface to that, there's a few things that got us into this product. So I've been in crypto since 2011. 2020 is when I really decided to actually like build something specific that I thought would start to solve results or start to solve problems that I thought had been overlooked for the longest period of time in this space. From that, then there's a few things that we all know has been missing from crypto, and then a few things that I personally was motivated to have available in here. And the personal motivation in this case kind of comes around the support side, and then that leads into the messaging portion of this program. So, and then the kind of the quick aside on the support is, as far as I can tell, almost no products out there actually try and do support. We've just decided that Intercom does our support or some version of that, and that someone else does it, and then we hand these things off. And as a user of products and services, just to be frank, I fucking hate that, right? I want to actually have some utility. I want to be able to know how to use this correctly. I need support when I'm there. And so support shows up in a couple important ways. And again, it really kicks into the messaging side of the whole thing. How about let's see, Thomas, do you want to do the screen share? And it's easier to just kind of represent the product that way. Okay, cool, perfect. So self-banking, to me, started as a scenario of, well, what about just banking in crypto? Like, we don't really have banking yet. We have the words flying around. Oh, I open an account. That's my bank. I'm unbanked. I'm unbanked, right? I guess that's the one that the industry has rallied around. I wanted something different. I want what I get out of banking. So, like, if you start your journey in finance as say you're 18, you go to get your first account, you go to a bank, they support you in setting you up with all the tools that you're supposed to have. And then they kind of just say, here's your basics, now go and be free, right? That's your checking account, your savings account. And if you're coming in with deposits, they're going to try and sell you with some CDs or some, some investment utilities and that sort of stuff. That core concept, just as a notion, didn't even exist in crypto anywhere. So that's where this kind of started, which was like, what is a foundational set of tools on the crypto side such that we can replicate what we get utility-wise out of this on the traditional finance space? There was another kind of like a core thing that I saw that was missing, which is crypto has decided, and actually, you can go back and basically say that the traditional finance system sort of decided this too, in that we originally were trying to escape the barter system, which is a double coincidence of wants. You have to have something I want, and I want it right now, right? And then we can make this exchange and it works. We know that's nonsense if you've got flowers and I've got a table for that to ever line up, so therefore money, right? But we made another weird double coincidence. We've actually now settled that we both have to agree on the currency type. And so we have a double coincidence of currency types is our current pattern. If you have USD and I have USD, then we can agree to do an exchange and an operation. And yet, what does blockchain introduce? It introduces this concept that there is a dynamic set of options of what my currency type could be. So looking at that kind of gave the idea that this banking, this replacement for banking needs to basically make money a single player scenario. I want to show up and pay you with whatever money I've got. I want you to be able to receive whatever money you want. And then we both have done business together because we exchanged value. The value is the generic type, but the currency that fulfills that could be anything on either side of the equation. So I call this like making crypto single player. So that's where this product starts to show up, which is we went around and got all the fintech APIs that we could. We got APIs for card issuance. We've got APIs for payments, taking and receiving payments via card swipes, and then the APIs for doing bill pay, which is to be able to do ACH sends, wire sends, SEPA and SWIFT sends, or receives, on ramps, off ramps, either one. So those APIs, and then the APIs for minting USDC, right? So, and then the coverage for all those things. And then the way that we handled coverage was we needed this whole system to be distinctly different experientially than what we do have in the financial space, right? Right now, as a business owner, if I want to move literally down to $10,000, but let's call it, for sake of an argument, let's say I want to move $100,000 today, almost no one's bank will do that for them unless you already have that money sitting in cash waiting right there. And even then, they're still going to slow play that, right? So it's not yours. We all know this. Those keys belong to them. And that custodial nature is what adds a ton of friction to this whole thing. So self-custodial was paramount by design. It's as absolute as we can get it. And that is to say, it's only as good as the tools and the options we have out in the space. So if you're a decentralization self-custodial maxi, you might have some issues on the edges with this, but our argument is there's no other more self-custodial way to do this. And in that sense, we never touch and own your money, but these things come from like the card issuing partners. Like there's only, we can disconnect as much as we can. Okay, now that I've made that a little bit less clear than it was before, looking at the product itself. So what we've got here is you're going to see your basic flows coming into your account at the top in the overview. Those are representing different smart contract products in the background, but they're helping you to get an idea of your money coming in. your money moving through the system, the money going out, right? You've got the ability to look at money that has settled into your, if your payments are coming in, you got the ability to see the money that you've got on your cards. And let me help those make sense. So the tools below that, the bill pay, the back office, the card issuance, and the team access, each one of those is more or less an entire standalone company in the, out in the traditional world right now. Bill pay is going to let you move your money out of your stable coins into fiat space as fast as possible. The way I like to say this is we eliminated bank A from a transaction that requires bank A to send to bank B, right? We've gotten rid of A. Now you can move your money out of here faster than any other bank is ever going to let you do it, right? Because banks will receive money a lot easier than they're going to send money out. And so we've gotten rid of the slowest part. So that's how your bill pay system works. By the way, I guess I should add, I've been using this system that we built. I don't have a bank, and I haven't had a bank for going on 3 years now. And this is how I paid rent for years. This is how I shop at Costco. I'm only sitting in stablecoin, and yet I'm spending and operating in the world just fine without ever having a discussion about it. So bill pay was a lifesaver for that. Then the back office side, the next tab, this is for the merchants. So our main customer segment right now are all merchants. We are differently focused on merchants, say, than the rest of the crypto space. It seems like a lot of crypto space is focused on the consumer. We don't actually believe the consumer is going to adopt crypto first as the default way to go. We think the merchants are going to adopt that first, and then bring their customers on board as the experience improves for them, and as we make it easier and easier for them to make these products blockchain by default, right? So back office is where the merchant is going to see and manage all of their payments. These are the incoming payments that we give you the ability to dispute these things, refund these things. And overall, I won't belabor this point too much, but the quality of transaction is basically paramount for us operationally. This is the most important part of this, is giving them tools to manage their money better, because the better they manage their money, the higher the quality of their transactions. The higher the quality of the transactions, the lower the cost of the transaction fees on the network. This is something I could probably spend the entire time talking about this, because all of crypto seems to have not figured this one out. And we know this because we've seen how they perform, and we know how well the transactions could perform. So it's super important to get a handle on chargebacks, disputes, and that sort of thing, so that this becomes critical to us. You got the ability to manually create orders in here. I won't go too deep into that, but it's simple, but it's a total power feature. I sold my snowmobile to someone on Craigslist this way. I was able to take a $10,000 payment from a guy who's never used crypto in his life. Actually, let's do one of those just so you can see what the flow looks like. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to create a quick order, and then this is going to show you what it looks like as a customer of one of our merchants to buy something from them. So the consumers themselves don't ever experience this concept of crypto. They just buy something the way they're used to buying something. And then when they get a checkout link, which can be sent to them via the way that this manual create order process is, or as just part of the checkout flow experientially, right? This is just an API. You can embed this anywhere. This is their view. It doesn't look like crypto, right? Because it doesn't need to look like crypto, because this is an on-ramp event that then is transactionally turned into what the merchant needs for the sort of thing. So we're able to abstract that sort of concept. Okay, so that's how the merchant is making money, and then using our tools to support their operations. Then you've got the card issuance right there. This is so the merchant can create cards, manage the cards they've got, see the spend on the cards they've got, manage the spend on the cards they've got. So there's kind of like a depth of capability that is basically familiar. We've been using rain cards as some of the APIs for this. If you've used rain cards and been in this crypto space, then we have the same functionality with less clicks, right? And if you've done something like this through like Mercury or any of the other banking scenarios, our goal is to at the very least give you a parallel power feature set, if not greater, because you're spending all crypto this whole time, right? Final thing then is, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, Devin, I wanted to, before we get even go further, we have a question about chargebacks and
Oh,
dispute.
sure. Yeah.
Um, uh, Thank you so much, William. I'll just read off the questions. How do you handle chargebacks, disputes? Is that Web 2 or Web 3? And curious about what parts are Web 2 and which parts are Web 3.
Okay. Yeah, reasonable question. So the chargebacks are occurring on the Web 2 side because the user. So the way this works is the user is buying USDC for they're just on ramping, right? So it's an on ramp event, but it's placed in context, and that in context then adjusts how much you want to be on ramping. You can think of this as a digital ATM. So the customer then can dispute that USD portion. Personally, we're fine with that. I hear a lot of rhetoric about people's concerns. I actually think everyone concerned and trying to avoid and trying to find a way to like get into a system that doesn't allow that to happen. I don't think that's necessary. I think what's important about chargebacks is why is the chargeback occurring and what can be improved operationally to have prevented that. Because in our experience, a majority of the chargebacks and the disputes that we see come from mistakes and UX. They don't come from fraud. Now, what I will say about this is if you do see fraud and the fraud does start or the fraud does get through, fraud spreads like a viral wildfire because any asshat that just figured out how to steal something can't help but tell someone else how they did a thing. And then they all start doing that thing and that hack will blow up. So it is, I'm not trying to dismiss fraud. What I'm trying to say is there's two different categories of how disputes occur, and they occur by process or they occur by fraud. And process is under attended to, and fraud is overstated. I think I only partly answered that question. Then the other half I think was what's Web 2 and what's Web 3 in here.
Yeah.
The USD operation, the fiat operations are all Web 2. The crypto operations are all Web 3. And those depend on what the UX flow is. So I don't know if that's an adequate answer so much as I would have to just start specifically running through the technicals, I think, to give you like a literal answer. And if there's clarity, I can re-answer it. Okay.
Would you, I'll unmute you. Is there any further clarification you'd like, William?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, yeah, I would definitely appreciate more of the technical things as a technical developer. Definitely very interested in learning more about like what's specifically Web 3 versus what's specifically Web 2. Just because this is definitely a very interesting topic and definitely something that I've worked on before, mostly on the Web 2 side of things. And so I'm just curious like
Yeah.
where kind of like the things go in terms of the buckets.
Yeah. So, okay. So the times when the card is being swiped, that is very much Web 2, right? I guess this app is hosted in Railway, so that's Web 2. It's not decentralized and everywhere itself. We have some amount of data collection right now. Our roadmap, I'd say that's very Web 2 that we're collecting data. The roadmap of our data collection is to move that towards decentralization in that we believe there's a path and a design that allows the user to own that data. What we have to do is be able to get that design to conform with the regulations in the ways that we have to apply to them to make them work. I guess one way to say what's Web 2 in here is like while the software itself is global, in that it's not designed to conform to any particular jurisdiction. It doesn't have any constraints around the interface's design on what it can and can't do. Then we push that to the client side. So depending on what jurisdiction you're in, depends on whether you can apply for this or not, right? So KYB, KYC, that is inherently Web 2-ish. Yeah. Bill pay goes out to ACH and wire. So the outbound side of that has to route through a partner. In this case, Bridge. They might be providing crypto services, but it's a Web 2 design infrastructurally. Does that answer your question?
Just to clarify, like the merchant, when they're like interacting with the dashboard, they're actually doing on-chain operations that convert into off-chain Web 2 operations, right? So they have an on-chain balance, and whenever they want to do an ACH or wire, that's being triggered to an on-chain address, and then that on-chain address, that smart contract then programmatically like sends that off-chain, right? So that's being handled by a third party. So I do want to clarify that.
Oh, okay,
It's
perfect. Yeah,
it's just
definitely.
it's just constant communication between the Web 2 world and the Web 3 world, right? And vice versa.
Yep, that makes sense. And so that's handled by the API, where it's like, for example, Rain Card seems like they
Multiple
have.
APIs. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect, perfect. Yeah, but
Yeah.
thank you. That definitely helped.
But it's not just APIs; it's also like smart contracts, right? So all of Rain Card stuff is smart contract driven.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks for the questions. Okay, so I think the final thing on this product then I guess is just the team access stuff, but that all makes sense to you guys. So then the part where I guess, yes, perfect, great. So where this actually dovetails then in with messaging is, go ahead and hit that. So if you'll notice, there's a support button that you click there. So like I said, can you widen that panel? It should be, I don't know why it's defaulting narrower again. The support is first and foremost to us, because supporting your product means you actually care about your product in my mind. And I came here to build something that works. It's excellent. I mean, I built this for us. I built this for me. Being unbanked, I needed a way to then have a bank. And I got rid of my bank before this existed. So it was kind of like, cool, I'm in the ocean and drowning. Now we need to build the thing, right? So support ends up being pivotal, and anywhere that there's a function that's going to take place in this product, the customer can hit the support. When they hit the support, it's going to send a screenshot right now to our Telegram chat, which then I can look at and go, okay, now I know exactly where you're at as a user, and then I can jump right into the conversation with you. So we started with Telegram because I didn't want to go. I don't think this is a service that we want to pull this support. I didn't want to go get off the shelf support. I want to do support how we want to do support. I don't want. I've run hundreds of support events now for our customers. So even our merchants, when they go on, I've provided. I hop in and provide support channel for them, supporting their customers and trying to help them close their carts and do all that stuff. And I got a chance to really see like lots of different ways to improve this. So Telegram's where we started. Telegram does not make really the most sense. We really kind of need more client specific builds and stuff around it. This is an interface for the users of our product to be able to be messaging with us through Telegram, but not have to have Telegram necessarily yet themselves. And then to kind of go with the dovetail this with the agents concept is everything that I just showed you, then I've also built a framework, a graph-based context framework for the agents. So the agents can now start to see all of the different APIs functions that we've got, well, the functions around the APIs more specifically. And so the whole domain model itself is loaded into context for the agent. And then depending, and we can't quite demo this yet. I was hoping I would have this functional by this morning, but I pushed some changes last night that made this not quite there yet. But the user can now actually just start to ask the agent to do some things or about some things. And this is both in potentially in the support side, but also extends off the support side, right? So the support was the intro to us introducing messaging into the app. And then it's the agent side where I think there's a lot more actual messaging that's going to start taking place. And you guys have on-chain agents, or you guys are looking at on-chain agents. And the way I see the kind of the future of AI interactions playing out is you have your agent to do the communications with all of the other agents with. So the core agent in this case is like, so this is me providing, the initial path on that thesis, which is you should have this core agent to you. It's going to have all of your personalized context, and it's got all of the functionality that you can operate and use. Now we've got on-chain agents that have very specific jobs and roles to go play, to go fulfill. Go grab yield, go get staking, go get me some arbitrage Bitcoin, go get me some ETH, go whatever, right? Go take a compound position, go get me, go get me from here to there, but to have a couple hops in between, right? I see our agent being the principal interacting force of those agents, not the user themselves. And I will say this as a user, I don't want to interact with like a myriad of different agents in the future. I just want to be able to like know that things are getting done or direct things to get done, right? Maybe I'll pause there because I can kind of go on a rant and tangent and rabbit hole, and I'm not sure that's the helpful way to go. But yeah, that's kind of what we've got so far.
Fantastic. All right. Let me thank you, William. Let me unmute you. I'm actually gonna. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this definitely reminds me of when I used to work in. Oh, okay.
Yep.
When I used to work in fintech, there was this tool that I used called Posh AI. And I think there's definitely a lot of inspiration that we can get from that. And so it's basically just a Web 2 version of, I think, what you just mentioned, where they use a lot of fintech data and they are integrated within the banks. And so I definitely see a lot of very similar features that I think we can definitely get a lot of inspiration from. And so I'll probably just put it in the chat. But Posh AI is definitely a really good tool that I know different credit unions are using. But it's primarily within the banking space, so definitely a lot, not so much unbanked. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you, William. Yeah, I'm going to put Fabri on the spot, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts in your work with the AI agents in MessageKit. Oops.
Hey, Sheha.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing really well, thank you.
Hey, team, thanks for the presentation. This is looking very good. Yeah, so we've been diving also into AI agents, and we started with a project that is called MessageKit, which is kind of like an abstraction on top of XMTP to make it easier for developers or even Web 2 developers who are not very deep into either encryption or Web3 to just get started with to have agents that can be interacted from the XMTP apps of the ecosystem, like Converse Wallet and Converse. So that was kind of the initial approach. And yeah, so we are thinking like, what was your experience? My question would be, what was your experience integrating XMTP? And what do you think is the most valuable thing that XMTP provides in this context? If you had to pick one, which one would be?
I mean, we haven't integrated XMTP yet. That's what I guess that's how this kind of all started off was. I went off on a cowboy code corner and just started throwing support and agent stuff into here and introduced messaging. And then we were like, oh shit, I guess we need a solution. And then we grabbed Telegram pretty quick. So that's how it started. So I mean, the ability to control the exposure of your data is where I care about alternative messaging protocols, right? That's what's most interesting, is the ability to customize the experience and control the experience in line with the user's intended experiences.
Yeah, actually, and just to add on that, like when we were checking out like customer like support like messaging frameworks, One, I think Devin mentioned like intercom, but we didn't like the flexibility that introduced because we really wanted like support to be embedded into application. So we wanted from you to click a button and then for support chat to open up, not some kind of like bubble like on the bottom right corner that nobody ever clicks on. And then when you do click on it, it's just like an automated like AI, like really bad like conversational AI agent, or it's just customer support that just doesn't answer you like ever or at all, right? So we wanted something where you could communicate with us, direct access, and support was available anywhere. We chose Telegram just because that was something that we could implement very quickly, but I definitely did not enjoy, or we did not enjoy integrating that, given that it was like half a WebSocket, half a post like request API. Like it wasn't feasible. And given that all the accounts that we're doing right now is going to go towards safe, all our merchants are going to have safe accounts. Every user that logs in is going to have native or on-chain passkeys. Devin and I were really excited about passkeys. We think it's the future. I think like we want all our merchants to use passkeys and everyone in the business to use passkeys. So that means everything to do with signing transactions, to session keys, to having like allowances, et cetera, et cetera. So we have role-defined permission sets. And the way we kind of see it is if we can have XMTP built on top of safes, it then means that then these safes, which are multi-sigs, can then be communicated across the network and also to us as well. And we wanted some kind of like framework where that would allow us to basically put messaging at the front, like on the front end on our stuff, and then being able to just have it on like the familiar apps that we have. So a crazy idea I thought was, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if you could basically send an on-chain message and then that somehow converted to Telegram. So the apps that I use for my day-to-day, like Telegram, WhatsApp, whatever, would that be possible, right? Again, I'm not totally opposed to using Converse and anything and other apps like that, but I just thought that may be something that might be worth exploring as well, right? Because given that we're in the space of going between Web 2 and Web 3, why not vampire attack Telegram, right? And use something better, right? So yeah. Devin and I are all about vampire attacking, we're starting.
You're developing a theme here, right?
Yeah. So
interesting. So you're saying like your idea is to like bridge Telegram into the XMTP protocol, something like that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's been explored. I was just thinking of that the other day as like an idea that could be cool. Especially because a lot of our merchants already like use Telegram, and to get them to download, create a wallet is like, they don't understand crypto, right? There's a reason why we abstracted everything away for them, right? Is because they don't want to see crypto. They don't know what Base is. They don't know what gas is. There's only so much you can do with that account abstraction, but then creating them a front end that just looks like they've logged into like Bank of America and they're familiar with these operations. They know what an ACH and a wire is. They don't know what like a transaction is that gets sent on chain to whatever network, right? So we wanted to just abstract that all away, and to get them onboarded to something like Converse it's not impossible, but it's definitely like a little bit more challenging than say something that they already use in the day-to-day, right? Which is Telegram. I mean, Devin, one of our merchants is using like Telegram like for their business communications, right? But if we can get them to just migrate entirely onto XMTP without them even knowing, that would be a huge step towards just getting people to use the XMTP network, right? And I think that's something that we really want to do, is get people to use messaging networks without them knowing they're all on-chain permissionless, right? So we're really excited about that.
Well, and to like dovetail on that, right? Just to hammer that home, which is, it's then easy for us in that once they're on there, if we vampire attack their traffic and now all of their Telegram traffic is actually intercepted, run on XMTP, they're using that Telegram interface for a little bit. Then when we propose a change, hey, if you switch to this UI, you'll actually get an enhanced level of whatever that is. Now it's less friction, right? Because they're already happy with the whole system. You just tell them nothing changes, but they just switch to this. Okay, great. Just on spitballing on your vampire Telegram tech idea there. Thank you guys for the questions. So this is fun. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you seeing? Sorry, one more.
Of course.
Are you seeing groups somewhere in your vision?
What do you When you say groups, is that just
group,
like
group chats?
just a group chats? Okay. Devin, you wanted to say something?
I kind of would actually just with that question, I would circle back to the previous, my original statement, which is like, whatever the user experience is that's necessary to improve the outcomes, then those should be within scope, right? Like messaging is commodity features. How we do it though is then that's the unique sauce today, right? And so if XMTP can off whatever, I'm getting off track. You said groups. We would, if groups are relevant, which I could see them being relevant. I mean, the whole point of this product is to be a better operating system for your money. And so you've already got a pool of users in here. It would make sense to have a group interface available in here, at least as an option. Some people want to have that second app, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, groups would make sense.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Devin. This is awesome. Where are your initial customers right now? Like, what does your initial market look like?
We've focused on what we call merchants that are operating in high risk zones, but are mispriced because they're actually really high quality operators. So they should be at low risk prices. That being said, specifically, we look more at like the cannabis space at the moment, because that is the space that is got some amount of great business operators in there. We're not interested in the whole space. I think anyone who is interested in the whole space should be wary. It's a very hard space in terms of the transaction quality to figure out how to manage it. But it's also a good place to sharpen and improve all the skills. So we start there, but it's certainly not limited to that, because at the same time we've got a couple projects that are programs that are being set up through universities to look at funding of like their college athletes on their sports teams, because it turns out they've got a lot of like foreign students, and it becomes very difficult to actually operate and navigate and move that money around. So that's an interesting sector that's completely outside the risk scope. Then you've also got the fact that basically Stripe defines any business that's not, a restaurant or selling clothes as something that's potentially high risk, right? And so Stripe has, like, for example, a really high bar on what they're going to consider, or I don't want to call it a high bar because it's not really a good way to quality sort these things as far as I'm concerned. But basically they use that as a proxy to say, if you're not in here, you're probably not a good business operator. And we think that's exactly where all of this potential is showing up at. So there's a lot of e-commerce businesses, and there's a lot of people that are doing high quality services that are being by default considered high risk, because it just doesn't look like a standard business. And the more we continue into the future, especially at this fast rate that we're moving, the more wild businesses are going to be popping up with ideas on how they can go make money, and they're going to look less and less standard. And we think they're going to be more and more that are going to get filtered out of these traditional providers, and would make a lot of sense for us to jump in with.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
So fascinating. I'd like to, Morgan from Hopscotch has a question. Would you like to unmute and ask it? I know it's in chat, but
Sure.
would love to hear your voice if you'd like, Morgan.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, our company is really involved with this aspect of chargebacks and verification for payments, and kind of we love the discussion going on right now. We're wondering if there was any path to put that arbitration part, kind of that chargeback aspect, and put that on chain. It might kind of solve some of your regulatory requirements as well, because if I'm not mistaken, it sounds like you're in the loop of money in regards to a regulation requirement. So I was wondering if there's a path to put basically that chargeback opportunity and put that on chain to make it truly kind of non-custodial payment.
Sure. We're actually not in the loop unless us having the finger on the trigger to confirm or deny the data is. But that doesn't change the fact that that's also interesting, that it to put its actual the functional bits of it with respect to the either the consumer or the merchant's money on chain and arbitrate it there. The reason we're not on that position is because we're that money that's sitting there never sits in our account. So the money that's being dealt with in the chargeback scenario is completely outside of our custodial control the whole time. And it default comes out of the merchant. What we then do is we help provide the tools for the merchant to recover that or prevent that loss, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
And then that comes in two forms, which is the pre stuff, which doesn't relate to what happens once it's there. And then it's once the dispute has occurred, then how do we do that? And then I think that part going on chain would look something akin to downside protection. Is at least my hunch. Is like, how do you manage the downside loss on that?
Yeah, we've worked with a bunch of kind of like escrow payment systems and trying to use XMTP kind of like for that backend messaging system to be as safe as possible. So if there's interest in chain, happy to help out or point you in the right direction as well.
Yeah, that is super interesting. So like one of the ways with one of our merchants that's a dispensary, and like I said, the thing that makes their customers challenging, I'll just be frank, is they suck. They are some of the worst customers I've ever seen get a hold of money and be able to try and use it. I mean, I could go on for a long time about how bizarre their behaviors are when you look at their transactions. And what's paramount in the process of managing that is a fairly high touch communication with the back office team that at least in this case, this merchant has. We've used that to model the processes that we've set up for everyone else, but it is all in that chain of custody of data that's moving around. And the thing that e-commerce did that all of the banks and the money networks hated was they basically got rid of that signature event that we used to all do when we would sign for our receipt in person. And ever since then, you've got a slippery slope of basically disputability around that transaction. You know, the wet signature was the, you signed for this, sir. We're not doing your chargeback anymore. E-commerce was like, yeah, well, maybe I'm using a friend of a friend's card, or maybe it's a stolen card, or, you know, whatever. Maybe I'm underage. Who knows? Like, we don't know any of these things, right? And actually the card data that's passing through the network data doesn't tell you any of that, that's a whole interesting other side thing. And there's also like talk about weird data being siloed and how this does and doesn't operate around. But it's actually not easy to figure out whether someone has a card that they're supposed to have or not. So then the key to those disputes not turning into chargebacks is everything around your chain of custody with your data trail that you've got. And if you've got data, that's a huge leg up. And then if you've got data that can actually contextualize the whole thing and go, look, we can, you know, beyond a fairly reasonable doubt, we can affirm that this person did in fact make this purchase. The more concise we can do that, the more we can automate the handling of that data through that chain, the better.
And last note in terms of like really appreciate your feedback there, is like inside that context, because that context means everything for whether this is chain of transaction or that arbitration process or mediation process in terms of like determining if that dispute. That's kind of what we're really intrigued about using XMTP for, particularly on the group side, because now I can bring in that, you know, the mediator of that payment, I can bring in the buyer and the seller, and we can all be in the same conversation and have that context be held, you know, in the length of that payment. Where you have so much more of that data. It's like that back and forth between, you know, you and the plumber determining, hey, do I need another pipe? Like that is so much more important. And where's this payment coming from, right? In terms of that's a solved problem, but that context isn't a solved problem. So
100% agreed.
How to use groups here for sure.
Yeah. Okay. That all makes perfect sense. And I really like where your head's at on that, because we totally agree that that is the interesting part of that space entirely, is all of that data handling and getting those parties to the table. Because I think, like I said earlier, a lot of the focus and the assumption on loss within the payment space is around fraud. And actually, that's one of the ways that Thomas and I originally connected was around that, because what we saw firsthand is that, yes, it exists. No, that's not the important bit. Like, and I don't know how to stress this enough. You can't downplay it. It still has to be like massively important, because it's this contagious wildfire that can run on you, and getting back around that's going to be literally difficult, if not impossible in some cases. But if it is handled in these processes that you're talking about, Morgan, I totally agree, right? Like that's the right way to get there. Thank you. That's awesome direction.
Great. And Thomas, I saw you raised your hand. Did you have a thought to share?
I mean, it wasn't really a thought. I was just wanted to comment on like actually what you mentioned, Morgan, about on-chain dispute resolution. I think that's a very fascinating domain that I was once exploring when I was at what was it again? It was at DevCon. Biggest theme that came up for me, or one of my personal favorite themes, is zk-TLS, and I know I'm a huge fan of how zk-TLS operates, and I know one of its biggest low-hanging fruits for it to succeed is going to be dispute resolutions, because I know a lot of that can be automated through TLS, right? I'm talking about, like, I've just looked at your website, by the way, and I don't think zk-TLS can solve it in an easy way. But I know, like, for instance, like a lot of Binance's disputes can easily be solved in an automated way, and I know they spend millions of dollars a year, like a lot, like I think it's like hundreds of millions on dispute resolution agents, and they lose a lot of time and money and customers. So I know that kind of stuff is really critical, and that's something that we'd be really keen to explore, especially when it comes to like getting a lot of Web 2 information and putting them and generating proofs that then can be submitted to contracts. I think that's really interesting. And then getting XMTP to be somehow involved would be cool.
I remember a couple of years ago, and I probably go on way too long about this already, is this concept of AI arbitration. And if we were to kind of somehow be able to link this aspect of, XMTP group chat context with, this AI agent who's able to make a decision there could be some really powerful applications where I'm really using kind of an AI mediator between, say, the buyer and the seller, or in kind of like a marketplace transaction like this. So definitely kind of want to look out to build out those use cases. If you guys want to collab, happy to do so as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I know Thomas and I would both love to collab, because as much fun as it is to consider custom rolling the whole world, I think I would love to not. So, yeah, that would be cool. Maybe just to help to put some, I don't know how familiar, there's a number of people in here, so I don't know how familiar everyone is with the payment space and stuff, but I think this is worth sharing with a more crypto focused group, which is the experience that we had. I mean, we spent a year and a half. We've been working on this product. This is going on year 5 now, by the way. So we spent a year and a half, almost 2 years, just doing demos with every fintech provider out there, trying to get APIs, because, fighting the regulators who are doing dark deals behind to keep us all down wasn't necessarily easy. But what was crazy was learning how bad the crypto space has been in terms of handling transactions, and just kind of how I guess overlooked the whole experiential side of the cost of fraud and chargebacks has been on even all traditional payments. I mean, when we went on to there was fintechs that we met with. One of them told us, when we asked what's our loss rate that we could have, they were like, we're going to provide you services, and you don't need to worry about chargebacks. And I said, okay, well, we want to worry about chargebacks. We want to manage those things. What's our range that we need to operate in? Thinking we were going to hear 1 or 2%. They told us 14%, because experientially, crypto projects were getting such high chargebacks that they were just managing them with crazy higher and higher fees on these guys. Our numbers that we had while we were running with checkout.com were, we were on all crypto providers in the US, whether if you're doing any token sales or on-ramps, you're on a merchant code 6051. That's the crypto merchant code. There's another merchant code that they allow for NFTs, which is sort of weird. It's slightly better. But long story short is neither one of them have the highest levels of acceptance rates. The average acceptance rate of the 6051 merchant code in checkout.com, and they do a few $1 billion a year in transaction volume, was 74%. So we, for example, were at 91%. I would love to say, I use this number when we're out in the space and we're trying to get with our other providers or other partners and stuff, as an important highlight to show, you know, how fancy we are. For you guys who are technical, I would actually say it's sort of stupid how easy this was to accomplish. All we did was just manage for bins, which are the first 6 digits that get rejected from banks. So the bin is the first 6 digits that tell you which is the bank that the card comes from. And there's a whole bunch of banks that are known that don't accept crypto. So the easiest thing to do was just blacklist those bins and hey, your acceptance rate goes up. Now, that's just to go from 74% to like the mid 80%. And then a little bit of management over the top gets you the rest of the way. Some of this isn't rocket science, right? It's just paying attention to more improved ways of handling stuff. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to intense thoughts around UX with respect to how the money's going to move. Because again, so many of our disputes actually don't come from fraud, they come from process. And that process involves really just the customers forget where the charges come from. We've all done this. Look at your bank statement, review, go back through the month or 2 months, go, what the hell is that? Because you're looking at the bank statement line and it's a whole bunch of, it's all wrong. None of it lines up with the reality that you remember over that period of time. So then you go, okay, this is wrong. And then you dispute it. So many of those are actually just valid charges that have a label on your bank statement that doesn't make sense according to the context. And that's a very difficult one to manage for because the banks basically force that on you and don't let you adjust those things. Like in theory, we could all, as payment process providers, we could all allow our merchants to have like dynamically changing bank statements. Like your bank statement could, in theory, say, here's the thing you bought for this birthday party, you know, instead of saying, you know, it came from vendor XYZ, just to kind of demonstrate like that could be a dynamic response, but none of the banks will let you do that. Checkout.com fixed us on one generic statement. And then that statement, if it's confusing for the merchants, they lose that. So anyway, I'm belaboring a point, but I guess I'm just trying to point out like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit on improving experience on this side of the equation.
Thank you for that, Devin. Yeah, and it sounds like we have like a few threads to follow up on. I think we're heading up on the end time of the call now, but wow, so many. I think there are a lot of touch points that you brought up that resonated with other builders here like William and Morgan. And I think we have some questions to answer in terms of being able to bridge XMTP with Telegram. And maybe we could have a follow-up call with some folks on the team with you, Thomas and Devin, and you know, Morgan and William, if you'd like to join as well, we can get a group going. How does that sound?
I think that sounds great. Super
Sounds
good.
good to me.
Okay, excellent. We can learn more about the requirements and dive into that. Naomi, sorry to bring you up right at the end of the hour here, but you have some engineering updates for us. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Go ahead and here we go.
Yeah, thanks for this great call. It was awesome. A lot of great discussion. So we're full steam ahead on a lot of our priorities. We're just kind of polishing up V3 and hoping to have, you know, a full featured stable release for the protocol sometime in the next 2 weeks or the month. Maybe I'm a little ambitious there. But this week we are shipping self push notifications, so you can now filter out push notifications from yourself with these HMAC keys. We're working on self removal from groups, message retention policies, so that you can set kind of a time frame for when messages can be deleted. Browser streaming inside of the browser. We are doing a big refactor for message con types, moving them into Rust, which will make them more performant and easier to manage. And then, as always, making progress on decentralization and Converse.
Wow. All right. Thank you. Thanks so much, Naomi. All right, everyone. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Again, thanks so much for all of the sharing that we did today, all of the learning, and we'll get this group going together, and we will see you next time. Much gratitude to you, Thomas and Devin.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys.
so much. This was awesome. Really appreciate you guys.
Great. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.